Is South Carolina in trouble after a struggle win over Indiana? They just might be. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Monday, as I always say, if that's even possible. We got a great show for you today, and I appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys tuning in each and every day. Now, Locked On Gamecocks, like I said, appreciate our listeners and the people that are making it their first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You guys remember we talked a lot about Game Time. We're going to continue to do so. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, let's get into the show. We're going to recap the women's game from yesterday and then a tough weekend on the diamond as well. But first and foremost, I said this at the top, and this is what I want to get into first. Is South Carolina in trouble? They beat Indiana 64-53. They advanced to the Sweet 16. They did exactly what you expect them to do in terms of advancing. But are they in trouble? I don't want to sit here and overreact to one game, but in this time of year, it's hard not to, because now it's win or go home, as we all know. If you have one bad game, your season is over. You cannot afford to do that. And I was surprised to see how close South Carolina played last week. Because here's the other thing too, guys. It's the game against Indiana specifically. Like, they come out, like gangbusters in the first game and just destroy Tennessee Tech. They win by 60. It's like an NCAA tournament record or something crazy. Like, just an unbelievable win. They fired on all cylinders in that game. They dominated every quarter, all that kind of stuff. Now, the other part of that is you're playing at home, right? You're in Colonial Life. That is a place they have played in and defended very, very well. I think it's like one loss in their last 60-plus games there, right? So, and that was at UConn in February. But what happened against Indiana is concerning strictly in this point. If you come out and start the way you did against Indiana, moving forward, you will get beat. It may not be next round. When you're right now, as I'm recording this, the winner of the Maryland-Bama game will play South Carolina in the Sweet 16. Now, then they will get the win. They will get the winner of Duke, who's waiting on the winner of UNC and somebody else. Most likely, you would expect to play, I think, Maryland or Bama, and then most likely Duke. You've already played Duke. You beat them by double digits early in the season, all that kind of stuff. But make no mistake about it. When you keep advancing and the level of competition goes up and the stakes are higher, as everyone knows, and the lights get brightest, you cannot afford to do what you did yesterday against Indiana. South Carolina came out. They were losing after the first quarter. They were down 12-9. They were losing basically 3.5 minutes into the second quarter. They were down 19-11. Now, then they turned it on. But when you start a game like that and you're 4 of 20 for your first 20 shots, you're shooting 20%, not just from three, not just from deep or anything, in general. I think they only had 2 free throw attempts at that point as well, at least 2 points off free throws. So you're talking about shooting 20% from the field. You're only down 8. I think if that would happen in a situation like you're playing a UConn, you're playing a Texas, hell, if you're playing an Oklahoma, right? That's a 3 seed, LSU, and they are on, and this is the start you get, and you have to dig yourself out of a hole. It's very hard to come back from that. The concern I have, and I am, this is me being personal in the moment, never reacting. I still think this team is going to win the national title, point blank, period. They are too talented and too good and too well coached not to. I think they're playing their best basketball over the last span of three weeks or so, probably more, 3 weeks to a month. I think that those 2 losses in 3 games to Texas and then also to UConn really turned things around. Now, defensively, they're playing great. Defensively, I think they're playing great. They only allowed 53 points in this game. But it was shocking to see them only score 64 and to come out as cold as they did. Now, the other part of this, too, that was very concerning, You start in the first quarter, I think they ended up like 4 of 16 or 4 of 17, so under 25%. In the first quarter, they're down 12-9, like I said. But you had about 5 or 6 turnovers, mainly from Sinai Fagan, like early on in that game. If you do that against a USC, a UConn, Notre Dame, like I said, even like an LSU or something like that, you are going to find yourself in trouble, especially if they're on. Like I look at a team like LSU where it's like, I know you already beat them and you beat them handily, but like if Flaugier's on, Anissa Morrow, especially how good she is down low, they have another third All-SEC, All-American like type caliber player. That is a huge issue. You cannot start slow like that. You've got to put your foot on people's throats early and often and pull away so you do not find yourself in a situation where you have to be in come from behind mode. That is where this team has struggled more than anything. It happened against Texas, and it happened really badly against UConn. That UConn game in Colonial Life, you kept thinking, well, they're going to turn it around at some point. Like at some point, they're going to turn it around. They're going to turn it on, and everything's going to click like it always does because it's South Carolina women's basketball. That's what they do. But this one specifically, it was tough. It was tough. It was not a great start to the game. Now, you cannot sit there and only focus on the first 13 minutes of a 40-minute game, right? I love what they came back and did after that. They're losing 26-25 at the half. They come out of halftime, 26-14 run in the third quarter. They end up winning the game by 11. What do you call it? Yeah, 11. And win, handily the rest of the way. Now, the other part of this too is like, I know the offense wasn't great, but again, you held them to under 15 points in every single quarter. I feel like if you're going to hold teams under 60, like this South Carolina team, they're going to have a really hard time. Other teams are going to have a really hard time keeping this South Carolina team under 60. So defensively, if that effort is still there, you might not win pretty, you might not win big, but it's going to be very hard for teams to beat this South Carolina team with the talent they have and how often they are able to rotate players in, rotate scorers in, and keep coming at you in waves. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to beat them if you're not able to score 60 points. I would imagine as the level of competition gets better, moving on, as you get further into this tournament, it's going to be harder to limit that. But I also say that, talking out of both sides of my mouth, kind of, because that's exactly what they did to Texas. It's exactly what they did for most of the SEC tournament. So they are capable of doing that. If they play defense like this, I don't think anybody in the country can beat them. I really don't. But they cannot find themselves in a hole early and then look around like who's going to turn it on. Because as good as this team is, you don't have an Asia Wilson. You don't have Chloe Kitts has been awesome. She has been awesome. And you have so much talent on this team. I don't know if there's a player on this team yet where you're like, okay, if we're in a tight spot, who is going to take over a game for us, right? Like men's basketball, like Colin Murray Boyles would take over games for you. Who is that person for this team? There's such a good, fundamentally sound team, right? Where it's like, it's not just like one superstar like we've seen in the past. And a lot of times we see that in, like, look at USC. I mean, that's what that is, right? Like that's they have a good team, but they have the best player in college basketball. UConn is a really good team. They also have Paige Beckers. So it's like, I think with this team, you have so much star power and so much talent everywhere. But if you find yourself in a situation where it's like somebody has to be the guy, that's poor phrasing. Somebody has to be the person that's going to take over a game. Who's it going to be? It can be, maybe it is Chloe Kitts. I mean, she was the MVP of the SEC tournament, and she's a really, really good player. But you have to figure out who that's going to be if you find yourself in that situation. Now, hopefully we don't find ourselves in that situation anymore. I would love for them to kind of skate through the next 2 rounds. And I'll tell you one thing, too, about this team specifically and about Dawn Staley teams. And it feels weird to say because I know they lost 2 of 3 during that one stretch. But, guys, that's like the only time that's happened in like 4 years, right? This team responds so well when they have come out and played poorly. Like, they have responded so well when they've come out and played poorly. So I expect them to do that again. I expect them to come back kind of like with their hair on fire in the next round. The team that they're going to face next, whether it's Maryland or Alabama, I don't think they'll have as many problems with. It'll be interesting to see where they end up going, and or who they end up playing. Also, just kind of going through some of the numbers from the rest of that game. I told you started out 4 of 20. You end the game 20 of 35, right? Because you finished 24-55. So 20 of 35, what's that off the top of my head? 3 out of 7. You finished at 43% shooting. So that's really good, 42.9 to be exact. Those baseball days and batting averages really come in handy. I think that's right. Yeah, right? Is it? Yeah, it's 4 of 7. Anyway, shot nearly 40% from 3. You hit you finished 11 of 16. You had 10 more free throws than they did, which is also really, really good. You only shot 13 threes, which is kind of interesting. Out-rebounded them by 10. That was something. But again, 12 turnovers is a lot for this team. That's not very it's uncharacteristic of them, but you also forced 16, which is great. So we will see. Right now I'm looking at it just as an update. This is kind of probably fruitless and stupid to do because we're going to end up getting into all of it at some other point. But right now, Alabama is up 41-39 at the half against Maryland. So I think that's who you'd rather have because at least you're familiar with them from this season. But we will see if that's the case. Also, now that I'm looking at it, that region's in Birmingham. So maybe it isn't. Maybe you do want Maryland instead of Alabama going into the regionals because that's going to be played basically 45 minutes from Alabama's campus. I will tell you right now, somebody that's covered that team before, they didn't travel to Cleveland for the men's team this weekend. I don't think there's going to be a ton of people traveling to Birmingham for the women's team, especially when they know what they're walking into against a team like South Carolina. It's a team you already beat by 18 points, but we'll see how that all fleshes itself out and all that. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of baseball. But before we do want to give a quick shout out to our friends at 5 Hour Energy. You guys have heard me talk about 5 Hour Energy before. It is what gets me through the late nights and shows we got to record, especially come tournament time, and it'll help get you through your day-to-day life as well. Now, daylight savings time snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes it needs a little bit of boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late, watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in around the golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day-to-day life, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action in NCAA March Madness, and 5 Hour Energy helps me keep up the next day. Also, like I said, longer days, love getting outside, either going for a walk with Pepper, maybe going for a run or something like that. Tropical Burst is my go-to for a quick boost, and the watermelon is delicious as well. Whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab, and it keeps me feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12 or 24 pack delivered right to your door. If you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Also, if you're local, maybe you live in the Lexington area and you're off 378, that Lowe's supermarket probably has a lot more in stock now that I'm not living there right behind there anymore as well. So go check that out. We'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks. Make sure you stick around. We talk a little bit of baseball after the weekend in Arkansas. All right. I'm just now realizing that this it says Oklahoma swept South Carolina. It was Arkansas, obviously. Let's talk about it real quick. Not a great weekend, obviously. It starts off with a 12-2 loss. We talked about it. Was it a must-win? I don't think it was a must-win. You have got to figure out a way. You've lost 3 straight to UNC. That's your midweek this week. And then you have Tennessee. It does feel like you're kind of on that, like the up part of a roller coaster, if that makes sense, where it's like, man, like starting off a season where, I think the vibes feel much different if you don't give up 3 runs in the 9th inning and 10th inning of the opening weekend against Oklahoma. That's a week ago. It's time to move on, all that kind of stuff. You're 1-4, including that game, since it happened. The win over, obviously, against College of Charleston midweek last week. You get UNC, I think, in Charlotte this week, and then you are back home for the Tennessee series. Now, here's the thing. I think you're home. I don't think you have to go to Tennessee. If they go to Tennessee, Ethan Petrie might hit 87 home runs this weekend. But going into that weekend, it's like Tennessee's beatable. They lost 2 games in a row last week. Lost one to Alabama and lost one in the midweek to East Tennessee State. Now, there's just so much frustration and stuff that happens, and in a baseball season in general, right? You're starting to get, and I'm not throwing in the towel on the season. I compared this to a roller coaster earlier. It feels like you're the part of the roller coaster. It's like, oh my God, like, is it ever going to get back to the easy part where like the momentum will take us into the downfall or the downhill? Because right now it's like, you start out your season and your first 3 series are against top 5 teams. Now they're top 3 teams, right? Tennessee and Arkansas are both in the top 3. And going on the road to Arkansas, that's a hell of a baseball team. That is, they haven't won it all, right? They haven't done that like Florida has, Vandy has, Tennessee has, LSU has. But make no mistake about it, Arkansas has been one of the premier teams. They're a dropped pop-up from winning a national championship in 2018. And that program has been on the doorstep of trying to win one. It almost reminds me of like Georgia before they finally got over the hump in football in 2021, because they have just been right there. Really good program. It's understandable you lose to them. We hate that you get swept. I try to look at this and think of it in the positive way. Like, I don't think it's a bad baseball team. I really don't. I think you have all the pieces to be a good baseball team. I don't know if you have the pieces to win the SEC or make a run to Omaha. I do think you have all the pieces in place to be a postseason baseball team and be a really good team. Like it's about to heat up outside. The bat should get better. But now there's just stuff where it's like, it's just frustrating things like that happen during a baseball season. And you're like, what is like, like the starting pitcher for Sunday is knocked out of his start because he got hit in the head with a home run, either in BP or in game 2. I forgot if it was in the game or not. But he gets hit in the head with a fly ball, and he's okay. But he's in concussion protocol. And so it's like stuff like that where you're like, God, can we just catch a break? And I feel like a lot of times in baseball especially, it's like sometimes you just need to snap a streak, catch a break, and then things have a tendency of turning themselves around. This is not going to be, I hate to say this, it's no disrespect to Lamont Paris and that program who fought their ass off all year. So I'm not saying anything, negative about them for that. But this is not going to turn into a 2-win season-long thing like you saw with basketball. This is not going to be a bottom of the standings team. They're too talented for that, and they've got too much talent to do something like that. I think it's just one of those things like you got to weather the storm. That first 3 series is going to be a bear. It's the SEC. Like, Georgia's a top. I think 4 of the top 5 teams are from the SEC, and it's been that way the whole season. Like, we're going into the 3rd weekend of SEC play coming up this week, and so you played 6 games. South Carolina is one of 5 teams that has either 0 or 1 loss total, so you're in the bottom 5 there. But you may start 1-8. That is a potential real thing that could happen. You're playing a Tennessee team that leads the country in earned run average, 2.23 ERA. They have bats everywhere in that lineup and on the bench. I mean, they are about as complete of a team that you can see in college baseball right now. But it doesn't mean that you can't go up and bite them and get one out of the 3-game series. You saw Bama did it last week, and like I said, East Tennessee State did it in the midweek. So try to figure out a way to win one. I think at this point too, for South Carolina, one of the things, like a lot of times you'll see this in like the midweek games aren't as important as the weekend games. And that's the case for these really good teams. If you drop one, South Carolina needs as many wins as possible. So dropping one is not really what you want. I think where you start building the confidence in this team is by winning those midweek games. And not just when they're against UNC, when they're against Presbyterian, when they're against, who like the lower level schools. that's where you start building the confidence in terms of like, yeah, go out and run Rule, a lesser opponent from the state, right? And take that like momentum into the weekend. That's what this team really needs. Okay, that is all for this episode. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Monday. We're gonna have another episode later tonight. We're just waiting for a few things to go final. In the transfer portal, a total of 4 players entered the portal today. 3.5 really. Pringle, I think, was out of eligibility, but he's entering his name in the draft. It's kind of doing what Carson Beck did. He entered the portal with the potential to get into the draft as well. It's very similar to that. We'll explain all that later. But make sure you are listening to each and every episode of Locked On Gamecocks on audio as well as on YouTube. We will be back later with more. So tune in then. Go Cox.